hablando públicamente y que tienen gran prestigio, como Douglas MacGregor, por ejemplo, ya nos está diciendo que los preparativos se están llevando a cabo con demasiada precisión como para ser solamente una cuestión disuasoria. Y eso, obviamente, después de las palabras de María Corina Machado ayer, apareciendo en esa reunión de negocios de Miami, en la que nos viene a decir que va a ser una operación fantástica, la de derrocamiento de Maduro, para facilitar también la caída de Cuba y de Nicaragua. Es decir, que María Corina Machado ya está aleccionada desde la CIA o desde el gobierno estadounidense para convencernos de que la operación es maravillosa para los intereses que lleva persiguiendo Estados Unidos desde hace décadas. Es decir, derrocar a Cuba, el régimen cubano y el nicaragüense. Vamos, que básicamente la señora María Corina Machado, a ver qué mandatario en el mundo digno o que quiere ser mandatario en su país puede emplazar a un tercero, en este caso Estados Unidos, a atacar su propio país. Es una indignidad absoluta la de esta señora, pero claramente nos evidencia que está dentro de los planes de Estados Unidos, no dentro de los planes de ella gobernar Venezuela, sino dentro de lo que a Estados Unidos le interesa, que es derrocar Cuba y Nicaragua. Y para poder derrocarlos, antes tienen que eliminar al régimen que está apoyando tanto a Cuba como a Nicaragua, que es el régimen venezolano. Con lo cual, es abyecta la figura de María Corina Machado, y encima vergonzoso que se le haya dado un premio Nobel de la Paz, pero nos está dando a ver, junto a Tulsi Gabbard, que probablemente los planes sí son los de entrar en Venezuela, o por lo menos atacarla. No tanto entrar, que eso es muy complicado. Donald Trump no quiere ver bolsas de cadáveres llegar a Estados Unidos, pero seguramente sí atacarla y con bastante fuerza.
Bueno, pues la mirada sin duda va a estar en Venezuela en los próximos días, en estos planes de Trump que parece que no terminan de decidirse, pero que, como tú dices, dejan alguna que otra pista de la que hay que tirar. Alberto, muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros. Un placer contar contigo por aquí.
Gracias, fuerte abrazo.
Muchas gracias. Un abrazo, Alberto. Nosotros que volvemos a mirar a los mercados, vamos a escuchar al CEO de JPMorgan, nada más y nada menos que a Jamie Dimon. Lo escuchamos ya en Negocios Televisión.
Thank you everybody for being here this morning. I wasn't here yesterday, but I saw a bunch of video clips, and yesterday's program was outstanding. The lineup of speakers, including President Trump, really reflects the stature of this event, but more importantly, it reflects the stature of the city of Miami and the influence that we are generating both nationally and globally. Jamie, I'm sure you've been to a lot of conferences, I've been to a lot of conferences, and I've never seen the lineup of speakers that we've had yesterday and what we're going to have today. And a quick story. Mayor Francis called me up about 2 months ago and said, George, I am thinking about doing this event. Here are my speakers, and we're going to make this happen. I said, Francis, you're crazy. You got 2 months to pull this together. Look at the speakers. You have the president, you have Jamie Dimon, you have a whole list of very influential people. You're never going to make this happen. But if you want to do it, let's try. And here we are. So Francis, you're a little nuts, but congratulations on a heck of an accomplishment. So with that, I want to take a second and one more time welcome one of the most respected voices in global finance, one of the most influential bankers of our generation, Jamie Dimon.
George, thank you. So thrilled to be here. Thank you.
So, Jamie, my guess is a lot of people have heard a lot about your professional accomplishments, your career, and your impact to banking. But let's start with something a little bit more personal. And let's talk about how did your childhood and how did your family influence who you are as a person and who you are as a leader?
So first of all, thrilled to be here. A little embarrassing, this whole entry, but it's quite a production. I grew up, my grandparents were all Greek immigrants who came from Greece, never finished high school, moved to Jackson Heights, Queens, not far from where President Trump grew up, with a slightly smaller apartment than he had, a rental. But there were values that your parents taught. You didn't even know was happening at the time, which is, I'd say very fundamentally, it came from my grandparents, my parents, have a purpose in life. That purpose could be banking or art or science or being a political leader. It could be a caregiver. Treat everyone with respect. Everyone, like everyone equally and everyone fairly and everyone properly. Do the best you can. Whatever you're going to do the best you absolutely can, and hopefully make the world a better place while you're doing whatever you do. And those are kind of those values that's embedded in me, and I still believe them, and they're important for my family, and I think they're important for a lot of folks I talk about. When you talk about what actually drives them, it's things like that.
So you mentioned a very important word there, purpose. At what point in your life did you feel like you knew what your purpose was and your passion were going to be or needed to be or you wanted to be?
I didn't really. I guess I was in college, and I was always interested in business. I always read a lot. I always was interested in going out. My dad became a stockbroker, so I knew about financial services. But at one point, what I really wanted to do was help build a great company. Be part of the team, building a great company. I didn't know what I would be doing, but I knew that being part of a team, and anyone, I listened to Eric Schmidt, when you're on a team, and it's no different than team sports. You want the team to win, and that was kind of a driving thing. To me, financial services was fascinating because when you wake up in the morning and read a newspaper, almost everything in that paper is going to affect you. All around the world, stocks, markets, politics. So it's I always found it a very fascinating field.
I'm going to skip around a little bit, but you just mentioned something that I struggle with every day, and I'm sure a lot of people here do as well. In today's environment where there's so much information coming at you, so much media, so many moving, fluid perspectives, where do you find the most accurate information that allows you to make decisions and to really set strategy for your organization?
Yeah, well, there are really two ways. I get up really early, I read 5 papers, I read everything people send me. I'm just constantly reading all the time, surveying the landscape of competitors, countries, and stuff like that. The second way is really just get on the road and get out with your management team, get in a bus and go to a branch and talk to a lot of people, because a lot of very smart people out there, and the best ideas don't even come from America. They come from places you don't expect it, and you run into technologies and you learn things. I remember years ago I sent the consumer banking team 15 years ago to China, and they were like, why are we going to China? We're an American U.S. consumer bank. And I said, you'll find out when you get there. And I had them meet with Ping An and Tencent and WeChat and Alibaba, and it opens up your eyes. So just get out. I can go to a branch, you and I can go to a branch together today and sit down and talk to the tellers, and we will learn something. Something stupid that we do, or something that doesn't work, or something that they did better in another bank where they worked before, or something like that. So just constantly talking to people, constantly surveying the landscape. I heard Eric use the word curiosity, constant curiosity. Once your mind closes, you're not going to be able to make a lot of progress on a lot of things.
Not only do you learn something, but you probably get the real story of what's really happening, that by the time things get to you from a leadership standpoint, it's been filtered so many times, but when you're hearing it firsthand, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I don't allow people to filter stuff. I still read customer complaints, and I always tell people, if they ask you a question, you got to respond to me directly and not go up that chain of command, because that chain of command, starts to edit it and fine-tune it, and you got, if you're in a position like mine, you just got to break down those barriers all the time. The bureaucracy does want to control you, so you got to kill the bureaucracy. That's part of my job,
So let's go back to your personal life. I think we all understand and believe that challenges are also silver linings in life. So as you think about your career, your personal life, what's been some of your hardest lessons, and what did you learn from them?
In the personal life, we've all been through, some forms of personal hardships. But the lessons from those hardships, if you're talking about the mistakes you made, like the things you did personally, that's a great quote. You don't learn a lot from the second kick of the mule. Again, I heard the mayor and Eric talking about it. We've all made a tremendous amount of mistakes. And I always say there's a pattern to them sometimes. Like when you act in anger, well, that is almost always a mistake. When I was a young executive, someone gave me a business card that said, all I had to do was fill out the date. My name is Jamie Dimon, and I'd like to apologize for my behavior on the night of X, because I would lose my temper over something. So, so you're constantly learning about that too. And it's better to learn from other people's mistakes than making them yourself. And you could do that too.
So Jamie, the institution that I'm privileged to lead is $30 billion, 1 or 2 states, 1,300 employees. You're leading a $4.5 trillion institution 60 countries, 48 states, 300,000 employees. All right, we're almost the same. It's pretty much equal playing grounds between Jamie and I. Another 120 years or so, I'll be on that side of the room. But when you think about the importance of culture, you know, we believe culture is the backbone of strategy. But when you think about the importance of culture, how do you implement culture when you have an organization that's all about managing risk and it's of that size?
Yeah. Well, first, I've been there for quite a while, so it's a little bit different. But you better be relentless. I mean, and again, I'm going to go back to the team example. You know, if you have a team of people, everyone does their homework, everyone does their sprints, everyone learns the plays. And if you're the coach or the boss or, you know, whatever, you better be relentless. And we're pretty relentless on that. And it's not because you say we treat employees properly. They see you do it. They see you have bad people, you ask them to leave. You know, I remember the first time I have fired clients because they mistreat our employees. That goes through the whole organization, that these people mean what they say what they mean. Getting on the road, you know, a lot of people say, you know, we're going to take care of the customer, but you go to a lot of corporations, they all stay at the corporate headquarters and talk to each other. They're not going on a sales call. You know, they're not going to sweat the issue with why the client may not be happy with you or something like that. So you just got to have to do it day in, day out, 7 days a week, kind of relentlessly. That when you go through business reviews, you're going through the detail. How long does it take to do this? How long does it take to do that? And then people get it over time, and it kind of filters through the company. And then you got to communicate. I undervalued communication earlier in my life, but if you can communicate it properly and clearly, it really matters. And it can't be corporate pablum. It's got to be words people actually understand. So, you know, with stuff that comes out of my office is written by me. There's no corporate bullshit in it. I can't stand it. I won't allow it. But of course, people write it for me, and they think I'm going to send it out, and I will not. You know, and people know when you're speaking to them. And
so, you know, as I'm scrolling through Instagram, I consistently run across Jamie Dimon quotes. You're legendary. So one of the quotes that I thought about was, the worst thing a company can have is a bunch of yes men. How do you ensure that people are telling you the truth? How do you filter out the BS from the truth? And particularly when you're Jamie Dimon, because people want to please you, how do you filter this out?
Yeah, so if people try to please me, it pisses me off. That is not the goal of an organization. Even when people say they want to be loyal to me, that gets me a little upset too, because they say, don't be loyal to me. Be loyal to the principles for which we stand. Be loyal to the company, their clients. That's not a personal type of thing. I was at a thing like this years ago, and a woman was giving a great speech, and she said, you have to have one truth teller at the table. And she was walking out, and I came up next, and I said, can I just stop you for 1 second? If you've got 10 people around the table and there's only one truth teller, you have a problem. You know, and you weed them out. You know, that when people are honest and forthright, they raise the hand and they say that is not accurate, and you better have that, because if you don't have that, you will be going off base very quickly. And so you have a kind of a BS meter about how people are. And also, like you said, when you travel people, I mean, one of the favorite things I do, you know, I call it the breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm at the bar with you guys. You know, and when I'm at the bar hanging out with a bunch of people in the company around the world, they'll tell you. When they trust you, they'll tell you, yeah, Jamie, you really got to look at this. You know, you don't understand what's happening, and you know, and then they also know you'll respond. You know, it doesn't make them right, but they know that I heard it, and now it's my job maybe to do something about it. And over time, they see you do the right thing, and they know that you mean what you say. And then everyone who works for you does the same thing. So, you know, you don't have to necessarily come to me, because there are a lot of people who say, you know, this is the right way to do something, and we simply do it.
So basically what you're saying is leading by example is a key element of making sure that the people that you're trying to instill certain beliefs in, they're watching you basically emulate those behaviors.
Yeah, and you can't have friends of Jamie.
Right.
That your door's open to everybody. I don't know if Eric said this morning, but, you know, when you're in a room with a bunch of people, you know, you got to reach out to the person who's not speaking up. You know, you got to reach out. You know, there are shy people in the room. They may be man or woman or black or white or LGBT, but it's our job to reach out to them and to have enough empathy to see that they want to say something, but they're a little embarrassed, or it's harder for them to do it. And you know, and so very often I'll talk to someone after a meeting and ask them that. And then you got to get rid of the bad. There are these really, really bad traits that get built up, and I'm sure you've all seen these. It's the meeting after the meeting. Well, I didn't want to say it in front of everybody, but, and they're trying to get you to change the decision the group had made. It's the rope-a-dope, where the information wasn't shared beforehand. It's all these little tricks that the politicians and the BSers do to try to capture it. I don't have meetings after meeting. I tell people, if you can't say it in front of your partners, don't say it at all. You get paid a lot of money to do the right thing. And so, and again, I'll go back to a team example. In corporations, you do a lot of BS, but you can't do it on a football field. That person, they learn their play, they didn't learn their play, the coach will take them out. But in our field, it's very easy to, let people, they're nice people, they're a friend of mine. So the discipline on the sports team, that's what you want inside a company too.
So Jamie, you've highlighted the value of learning from your competitors and also the value of learning from other institutions outside of your industry. And when you think about what are some of the insights that you've been able to draw from companies or leaders outside of the financial services industry?
Yeah, so when I say I travel and see people, I always go see other companies. I've been to Google and Dell Computer and WeChat and Alibaba. I mean, it's amazing to learn. So you have to do it outside your own industry. I always love to ask people, how do you run your joint? What do you do? How do you meet? When do you meet? Who has the follow-up list? How do you run your office? How do you deal with customer complaints? And so you're always learning from that too. And there are always new tricks. And they're always, if you look at, people write analyst reports or people write for newspapers and magazines, there's always someone who just did something different or better. And I even remember when I was a younger executive, there was another guy there called Bob Lip, who's a very good friend of mine. I was watching him run a meeting. He was fabulous in running the meeting. He made it fun, but there was no BS about it. And he used to always use a quote, celebrate your successes, but in the management meeting, emphasize the negatives. And and he would always take you on the road and always take you to branches. And he showed you how to make it well, you didn't go to a branch just to show the flag. You went to a branch to, he'd sit down with we'd have lunch with the tellers in the back or something like that and learn from them. And you learn from other people all the time. I still learn tricks of the trade, always.
Jamie, we have a quick video, but before we kick off the video, you've been an unbelievably influential role model in the world of finance, business, even public policy, and geopolitics. And during the financial crisis, you were known to be the face of stability. So when everybody else was running for cover, you were cool, calm, and collective. So let's show a quick video, and then we're going to get back to a question for you.
In 2000.
Escuchábamos a Dimon, al CEO de JPMorgan, hablando sobre cómo está la situación económica en Estados Unidos, hablando también sobre su situación personal. Dice que no le gusta que le hagan la pelota. Estaba, pues hablando también de cómo comparte ciertas cosas con Donald Trump en un momento en el que les decíamos, el foco está puesto en los mercados, donde continúan las duras caídas, sobre todo en el Nasdaq. Vamos a repasar precisamente cómo están los índices en estos momentos, con caídas para el S&P 500 de cerca del punto porcentual. Se deja un 0,95% hasta los 6.731 puntos. Seguimos viendo fuertes caídas para el Nasdaq, siguen profundizándose, en concreto ya está 1,65% abajo hasta los 25.195 enteros. Por su parte, el Dow Jones también viene profundizando estas pérdidas, prácticamente llegando al punto porcentual, se deja un 0,92% hasta los 46.875 puntos. Vamos a ver cómo están precisamente las 7 magníficas, cuáles son las que más y menos caen en este momento de la sesión, con el foco puesto sobre todo en Nvidia. Vemos a Meta, que se deja más del 2%, vemos fuertes caídas también, por ejemplo, para Advanced Micro Device, MicroStrategy cayendo cerca del 6%, Intel se deja un 3,52%, vuelve el miedo, vuelve la incertidumbre a Wall Street. Mike Johnson dice que el cierre del gobierno puede durar más de lo esperado. Vamos a escuchar qué opina sobre esto. Volvemos a escuchar a Dimon.
You need people who are experts in this client, this credit, this legal system in Iceland or something like that. They're in the room, and you just move. It actually is kind of calming because you just roll up your sleeves, you start working 15 or 20 hours a day, you do it 7 days a week until the crisis is over. And as opposed to, it's almost like more relaxing to actually attack the problem than to worry about the problem. And so even today, when I have a real deep problem, I'd rather go to work, get the people there. And also we have a lot of great people. So, we were just working it, just nonstop all the time. You are kind of breathless. I mean, you have people all around you, some of these companies, people lost their money, their life, their careers, and it's terrible, but you want to help. So even some of these things, we set up outsourcing groups to get jobs for people who had lost their jobs, et cetera, and you just try to do the best you can. And you learn, by the way, that some people in a crisis, they are fabulous, and some people in a crisis, they are like children. I mean, literally like scaredy little children who can't believe that they have to have any kind of pressure like this. Like somehow life should have given them the gift of no problems ever. And so you learn a lot about people in a crisis.
It's interesting. When I hear you talking about crisis and you just got to work the problem, one of the things that we talk about at our organization is when there's crisis, it creates focus. And in all honesty, it allows you, if you can navigate that, when you get through the crisis, you've outperformed your peers. There's an opportunity to create some distance between you and everybody else because you were better prepared to navigate that situation and you executed. During good times, everybody's doing good.
Yeah.
During crisis, not everybody executes at that performance.
Yeah, and we've had pretty good times for quite a while now, yes.
So let's tackle something that you speak a lot about, which is you are a full-throated patriot and capitalist.
Yeah.
That's something that you've said repeatedly. And how do those beliefs, how do they guide your decision-making, particularly in a world that appears or is definitely so divided as we are today?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the most important thing to me is family and all that. Right next to that is my country. And it's not because it's just my country. Remember, this country was not a tribe. It was not a nationality. It was an idea, and anyone could become an American. And the power of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of enterprise, independence. You can do what you want. You can live what you want. You can say what you want. You can believe what you want. You get to vote for our people in government. It creates this huge innovation. I don't think all the American public fully understands the power of that freedom. And you got to, those of us who travel around the world, you'd be surprised how there are far less freedoms overseas, and it's stifling, and the heavy hand of government, which could be pretty powerful out of countries. So I deeply believe that it is this democracy, this country, are the shining city on the hill. It's the arsenal of democracy. It's the arsenal of freedom. It's going to be that way. It's going to be that way for the next 100 years. And all you got to do is read history. The world relies on us. I tell people, even non-aligned nations rely on America for the safety and security we provide for the world. And you got to be very careful when you look at what that means for people. So I think we should celebrate it. We should teach civics more. We should teach history more. We could acknowledge our flaws, but we should not denigrate the greatness of this country.
So, Jamie, how do we bridge these political divides in our country, or even around the world? Yeah. How's that going to happen? And what's the future that you see for the United States of America?
Yeah, you read history again. We've had divides before. We had the Great Depression. We had Civil War, for God's sake. We had Revolutionary War. We've had some terrible times. When I was growing up, students were killed on American campuses. Martin Luther King was killed. Robert F. Kennedy was killed. I mean, take a deep breath about history, okay? And that's what we are. We have a democracy. Sometimes it looks tough, and sometimes it looks tough. I say participate. We get involved, as you mentioned, in policy, getting things right. Getting policy right is kind of free for the American public. We need to do more of that. Just get involved. I am concerned, away from America, about the free and democratic world. So think of the wars in Ukraine, the terrors in the Middle East. Those things are challenging the world as we know it. Now, I think we'll be okay. I don't think of divine right to success. So I think we have to work those things to get them right. So I'm much more concerned about that than our democracy per se.
So JPMorgan just recently announced a $1.5 trillion initiative to help fuel America's security and resiliency. And you're going to be investing significantly in advanced manufacturing and defense and energy, AI, and quantum. What's the form of those investments, and what do you think that's going to help achieve over the next 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, so I often ask myself the question, what you should do. So if you read, I write my chairman's letter every year, and last year I talk about all these policies we got wrong in America, and that we need to fix them, and you know them, housing and education and crime and immigration and all these things we could do better, and it's holding us back. And but this year I started asking the question, well, what can we do about it? What can JPMorgan Chase do about it? Now, we do a lot around the American dream, affordable housing and mortgages and education and healthcare and skills, but the SRI, the Strategic and Resiliency Initiative, is to help finance, either kind of with equity money or big loans, companies who are building things that make America and our allies resilient. So think of aerospace, defense, AI, super chips, some of these data centers you read about. Think of medical ingredients. That what can we do to secure the future and health of the United States of America and our allies around the world? And so we're going to add over the next 10 years another $500 billion of financing. That could be for big companies. It's also going to be, we're going to also do $10 billion of more like equity financing to help. Think of a middle market company that makes an optical equipment that goes an F-35 fighter, but they want to build a second plant in anticipation of a government contract. We may buy a piece of the company, give them the money to build the plant. So we're just forming around it. We're putting real power about this. We want to do our part. And if you look back, I hate crying over spilled milk. We all should have started doing this 15 years ago. The Chinese have been doing this for 15 years. And so we're a little late. You read about rare earths, but we can catch up. We have the time, but we got to do it quickly. And we're also going to write about policy. We have a lot of policy to stop us from doing this. How we do budgeting for the military, a whole bunch of other things. So we're going to do a lot of work, to make sure we're doing the right things to keep us all free and safe.
This administration, Trump's administration, seems to be very, very focused on trying to lower the amount of regulation and bureaucracy so that private sector, the economy can prosper. How do you see that playing out? And how do you see that impacting the financial services industry?
I love the fact about being pro-business. This notion that somehow, being anti-business is going to help the average American citizen or even the lower paid. So I agree with the concept. I don't think we've done a particularly good job taking care of the bottom 20% of our citizens. Their incomes didn't go up, their health care is worse, they live in more crime in the neighborhoods, their schools don't work really well, and we did that. That's Democrat and Republican policies, by the way. So I agree with that concept. I don't agree with the concept of beating up business as a way to fix it. Business creates jobs, business pays people, business does... So I do think business can get involved, and I may write an op-ed soon about good public policy is free. Okay, if we do a better job for schools, it's free. If we do some of this our regulatory system has got, I'm not talking about banks, by the way, any one of you get involved in regulation, you could be a restaurant, you could be a small business, it is terrible, federal, state, permitting, local. The affordable housing problem, it's all regulatory stuff. You can't build a multifamily thing, you can't put this here, it doesn't have enough parking, it's got to have all these things. It's all regulatory, and so we can fix this stuff, and it's free. The government doesn't have to borrow more money to fix it. We already spend the money. We just need to fix the system a little bit. And so I think we should all get involved in trying to fix these policies that would make our country work far better. And deregulation is part of it. If you don't believe me, go to Europe, folks, okay? And Europe used to have a GDP per person of 90% of America. It's now 65% of America. It's on its way to 50% of America, which will jeopardize the health of Europe itself over time, and it's all anti-business, anti-investment, anti-innovation, and they kind of know it. And if they don't fix it, and we should help them fix it, because if Europe does badly, I think it's really bad for the Western world too. So, so I'm very pro this. I'm not, and we should do it wisely.
Jamie, let's tackle AI for a second. I was in New York last week, and I met with your team. I met with Google, Microsoft, Accenture, Boston Consulting, you name it. And the amount of money that is being invested in artificial intelligence and the pace of that investment is unbelievable. How is that going to reshape the economy? How is it going to reshape the way we do business these days?
Look, it's going to affect, the way I look at it is every application, every job, every customer interface, everything we all do, and you're all going to have your own personal assistants. You're going to have agents that do research for you every time you wake up in the morning. And I agree with Eric, it's going to be unbelievable. It's going to cure a lot of diseases that we've all been afflicted with. You know, my guess is the developed world will be working 3.5 days a week in 20, 30, 40 years and have wonderful lives. And there are some dangerous parts, which I'll let Eric describe a little bit here, but I would say embrace it. You know, technology has downsides. It's used by bad people, but embrace it. We had 40 million people working on farms. Tractors and fertilizers is now like 1.5 million. We live better lives. We have better food. Those people went to do other things, and so it'll be okay. We've been using it now for 13 years. We spend a lot of money on it. We know exactly what it does in certain things. It's literally at the beginning. There's whatever you think, there are waves of this coming down the road. And the only thing I'd add to that is if it happens too fast for society to adjust, and I will give you a thought exercise. I think there are 2 million commercial truckers in the United States, and if somehow you can push a button, convert it to AI, it's cheaper, faster, safer, less CO2. You kind of want to do it, but you shouldn't do it if you're going to put 2 million people out of jobs. And the way to handle that is retraining, income assistance, slow it down, early retirement, relocation programs, and it's all doable. And that would have to take both government and business doing that together. And so we should be preparing for that today because AI is happening rather quickly. We do it ourselves. We are constantly changing jobs, and we've reduced jobs in certain categories for AI. Almost all the people get redeployed. They go do other jobs. They're very smart, capable people. And I agree with Eric too. Human capital. You can't replace human capital. You can't replace thinking. All these things that people think are going to happen won't happen exactly the way you expect. So,
one of the things we like to say, and this will eventually change, that AI is not going to replace people. AI is going to replace people that don't use AI.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important element of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of moving pieces right now. You got trade, you got tariffs, you got Fed policy, you have AI. What is the single most important piece of advice you would give an entrepreneur, CEO, of how to navigate this environment?
Yeah, okay, ready? Here's my single piece of advice. There is no one thing. Okay, when you mentioned tariffs and trade and politics and geopolitics and potential inflation and Fed policy. You're gonna have to navigate all that. I think the best way to navigate that is actually, think it through. Kind of make the list of tailwinds and headwinds. They're not all going to happen at the same time. They're going to affect each other. If you look at all these problems we have, sometimes it isn't. People say tariffs. Well, that's just one thing. There are all these other things that take place, and they're like a lot of straws in the camel's back. And then look at the world a little bit. Like, what are the potential things of outcomes? Can you handle those outcomes? And then you'll be okay. Because what you really want to do is survive.
Right.
And serve clients when times are tough. And so, but there are a lot of things taking place today. And there's a lot of turbulence out there. And to me, that creates a little more uncertainty that you should be prepared for. And hopefully, continue to have the soft landing. But it may not happen. We just don't know.
I was just reflecting on what you just said about AI. And this, 2 years ago, my preparation for this interview would have taken 3 or 4 days, back and forth with the communication department. It took probably 10 minutes to come up with a list of questions and quotes, and it's just how quickly life.
I was going to tell you did a great job, but now I know it was Gemini.
Well, I helped Gemini. I polished Gemini a little bit, but it was certainly. So let's tackle something that's been a little bit interesting for a couple of years. So you've been famously skeptical about Bitcoin. But I think you've come off of that a little bit over the last 6 months or 12 months. And I know JPMorgan uses a lot of blockchain, token, and a lot of innovation into your business and your approach. How do you balance the risk of investing in technologies that are going to drive innovation and future growth? And what are your thoughts on stablecoin and Bitcoin? That's a loaded question.
This is a great way to deal with an issue or something like that. Whenever we meet as a business unit, so it could be a small business unit like consumer branches or a big one like global investment banking, on the table and on the agenda is what are you doing in tech, AI, et cetera. That is always on the agenda. And I do it differently than other people. I don't say what's in your budget. I always say, are you doing everything you need to do to win in the future, period? And I don't care what the budget says. I don't care what it is. And you may walk in and say, you know what, I was just over somewhere, I really need to do X. My view is, you better be doing X. You know, so to me, the budget is a roadmap. It is not your boss. And so I make people, we're going to do that. Stablecoin was one where I don't know how it's going to play out. But that also answers my question is, what do we do about it? We're involved. We're building a stable coin. We may build it with other banks. We have a JPMorgan deposit coin already, which I can pay you interest on. We use the blockchain. Any of these tools that you want to use for smart contracts and stuff like that, we are simply going to do. I don't know how it's going to sort out, but I'd rather be plain, which keeps us smart, than acting like I know the answer to it. And so, and we do that with all technology. Whether, you know, sometimes regardless of what I think about it, I want you to be dabbling in it. Because you're being smart, and it is much more important than saying Jamie does or doesn't like it and something like that. So, and we do that with almost all frontier type of technologies.
I'm going to shift on you a little bit. So there's been a historic relocation of both people and capital to Florida and to South Florida, primarily from the west coast of the country, the Northeast, Illinois, DC, you name it. And what are your thoughts on that? Is that going to continue? And for the residents of Wall Street South, how should we think about the future relative to that relocation that's taking place?
Yeah, my bottom line is I think that everyone has to compete. And when I grew up in New York City, I was probably one of those New York City kids that thought that it's New York City, New Jersey, and the rest of the world, something like that. And you know why New Yorkers are so depressed?
Why?
Because the light at the end of the tunnel is New Jersey. But now, and when I first started traveling the world, a lot of cities weren't great places, including like London, or Singapore, or Hong Kong, or Nashville, or now they're great. I mean, all these cities, they've got opera and food and infrastructure and terrific universities, and it's a competitive world. It's competitive between countries, it's competitive between cities, it's competitive between states, and you're mentioning a bunch of these states that are driving business out, and it will backfire. And so people vote with their feet, and some people act like they vote with their feet because they're selfish. They vote with their feet because they see a better life for them and their family. I'm not mad at someone if they leave JPMorgan because they say they got a better opportunity. I'm like, I understand. It's your life. I want you to be happy. It's not about you making me happy. And so there's a competitive element to all these things. And like even COVID taught you that you can work, a lot of people can work in different cities and be quite productive. And we have big technology centers around the world, including Buenos Aires, because they've got a great university on coding and engineering in Argentina. And so Miami and Florida compete. They compete with taxes, they compete with universities, they compete with, we have more employees in Texas today than we have in New York. If you go to Texas, you want to build something, you build it. The taxes per personal and individual lower. They've got their universities make sure they're graduating the students you want. And if you need to change a bus route because you have 5,000 employees somewhere, they just change the route. You go to other cities, you'll be negotiating for 20 years. And I think they're making a mistake. And a lot of those cities do things in the name of good, which create bad. All of these bad policies, in my view, usually hurt the lower paid people more. That's what happens. And they also don't acknowledge their problems. So I think like in inner cities, I mean, we do a lot of work in inner cities in the United States, in the schools. But the first thing is, raise your hand and say we aren't graduating kids with the skills they need to have a well-paying job. So I give you skills, 16 weeks, advanced manufacturing or taking care of a car, taking care of a Cessna, coding, compliance, something like that, $60,000 a year job at 17 with full medical. We're not doing it. We're just simply not doing it. And then, and I'm not going to blame any particular group here, but if you don't stand forward and say, we have a problem, this isn't working, you won't fix it. So there's a lot to do. And, like going back to Miami, Florida's done a great job. And if you look at what's happening, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia are growing. California, Texas has just started a new stock exchange. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's going to probably be bad for ISS and Glass Lewis And I think that's great. I think those institutions are terrible and should be crushed, and so the domicile of corporations, the litigation system we have to deal with. We better start fixing these things, because if we don't, folks, in 30 years, we're going the way of Europe. And, and we have to open our eyes and make sure we're quite clear. And if we do it right, it'll help all of our citizens, all of them, not just, the people who you think are well off.
Jamie, you have a very famous quote that says, if you're not confused, you don't know what's going on. I love that.
Yeah.
So that confuses me. What are you confused about most right this second?
I'm always trying to, sometimes people think these CEOs are totally on top of stuff. Just so you don't know, half the time I feel like I'm riding a Bronco and hanging on for dear life. And all the things you talk about, what does this mean and what does that mean? Well, I worry about all those things, and they do get quite confusing. But I heard Eric said, we iterate over and over. We don't try to get the answer in the first time. We meet, we'll do it again, we'll do it again, we'll do it again. And sometimes, so I tell people, in most even very complex issues, the answer is waiting to be found. It's waiting to be found if you get the right people working it over and over, looking at it from multiple different angles, or at least by the time you make that decision, you've minimized the chance of making a terrible mistake.
So I have 20-year-old kids, their first year, freshmen in college. And one of the things that my wife and I struggle with is, what advice do we give young folks today about their professional careers, given the fact that there's so much volatility in such a quickly changing landscape? The advice that I received from my parents is completely different than the advice that we should be providing kids today. What would you say?
I learned, first of all, the world is faster and it's more complex. It doesn't change my advice that much, but learn. It's a lifelong thing. You learn by already talking about people and reading, always. And it's always changing. Whatever profession you're in, it's changing again. You should be reading, thinking, talking, traveling, etc. Develop your EQ. Your EQ ultimately is probably more important for your happiness. It's probably more important for management skills. We just part of a team. I love Ted Lasso. The Ted Lasso is, and Eric's part of it. The team, the coach is trying to get both the individuals and the team to function properly, get the best out of everybody. Sometimes it dictates discipline. Teach the kids discipline. I'm quite disciplined. I do my homework, I do my exercise, I do my reading, I do all my pre-reads, I'm always focused in a meeting. But develop your EQ, and your EQ is empathy, communication, follow-up. Are you earning people's trust and respect? There are a lot of people who aren't trusted and respected because they're BSers, and everyone else knows. And so they have to be flexible all the time. That will bring a lot of happiness. I think it's very important that they take care of their mind, body, spirit, soul, friends, family, and health. I mean, that's just got to be part of what you do. And be curious, develop confidence, but don't be so overconfident, the arrogant. And another one is really important. Like, one of the great piece of advice I remember a guy telling a whole bunch of people was, use the brains you have, and this I do think is really important, to figure out the truth, not to justify what you already think. And I see so many people, they are really smart, but that smartness gets rigid, and they think they're so smart that nothing you say is going to change what they think or how they think. And also, don't allow yourself to be weaponized. It's almost the same thing. People will jazz you up your whole life, so if you do all that, you have a great life. I love that poem, If. If you keep your head around about yours when all those around you losing, if you can walk with kings and talk to the knaves, if you can, it's kind of that.
Jamie, when I was getting ready to spend some time with you up on stage, I just assumed you had written a book. And I said, I got to go find this book. I don't think you've written a book. So with that in mind, what do you want your legacy to be when you're done with JPMorgan? What is it you're trying to, what would you want people to say about you when it's all said and done?
So when I first took over Bank One, a former CEO of a company came to see me and said, you've got to leave a mark. You've got to leave a legacy. And his idea was that we take Bank One international. And I looked at him and said, we're doing a shitty job in the United States. I mean, what right do I have to go do it overseas? I got to fix what we got before I do that. I also told him, when I go international, it'll be big. It won't be, and I called him up after we did the merger with JPMorgan, and I said, that's what I meant. I'm not doing this little rinky-dink stuff overseas. And but I'm always afraid when a CEO, particularly of a bigger company, wants to leave a legacy. I always say, sell the stock. It's not about my legacy. I just want to leave behind a very healthy, vibrant company, and hopefully people say, you know, that son of a bitch made the world a better place. That's it. Like, okay.
All right, so just two quick comments, and we're going to bring this to a close. First of all, I was in New York last week, and I have to say this. If you guys haven't, when you go to New York, you got to go check this out. The building that JPMorgan just built at 270 Park,
Yeah.
It is phenomenal. It is really just an icon. I understand why it took a little bit of time, because things like that take time. And the American flag in the lobby, it is just world-class. Congratulations. That is, there's no way people don't want to go back to work in their office in that building.
And you probably didn't see it. The top 300 feet, we've put it up there, an American flag, which you can see for miles of the building, totally lit up. And we could put anything up there, but not just the American flag.
Jamie, we're all done for this morning, but I want to take a second and say thank you. Thank you on behalf of the city of Miami. Thank you on behalf of the American Business Forum. Thank you on behalf of just the country for the leadership you provide, the candor and the transparency in which you communicate your messages that have been so unbelievably impactful to this country, to our industry, and to society. So thank you so much for everything you did.
George, thank you very much. Did a great job. Folks, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Y ha llegado el discurso, esta entrevista a Jamie Dimon, el CEO de JPMorgan, hablando, advirtiendo sobre la inteligencia artificial, también sobre la parte peligrosa que esto tiene, pero dice, bueno, pues que va a cambiar absolutamente todo. Ha hablado sobre los aranceles de Donald Trump, esta guerra comercial y también, bueno, pues cómo está afectando a su empresa. Decía que es un patriota y que está orgulloso de ello. Muy pendientes de este discurso de Jamie Dimon, vamos a escuchar en este evento a Rafa Nadal, a Javier Milei, todo el día pendientes de este evento, este American Business Forum, pero también todo el día pendientes de los mercados. Les contábamos las caídas en el Nasdaq, que ojo porque empiezan a coger un cariz bastante más serio. Vamos a mirar sobre todo al Nasdaq. Viene con fuertes caídas en torno a los 2 puntos porcentuales. Ahora mismo se dejan 1,89% hasta los 25.135 puntos. También sigue profundizando sus caídas el S&P 500, se deja un 1,16% hasta los 6.717 enteros, mientras que el Dow Jones también viene con caídas prolongadas, caídas fuertes del 1,07% hasta los 46.806 puntos. Vamos a ver cuáles son las que más están cayendo en estos momentos. Hay fuertes caídas en las tecnológicas, por ejemplo en Tesla, pero tenemos, por ejemplo, Advanced Micro Device se deja un 7%, MicroStrategy 6,41%, Intel. Vamos a mirar a las más conocidas. Intel se deja un 3,65%, Tesla 4,81% abajo. Las principales tecnológicas, Nvidia se deja prácticamente un 3%. Las principales tecnológicas, algunas de ellas relacionadas también con la inteligencia artificial, pegándose un nuevo costalazo en el día de hoy, en torno al 3 al 4%. El foco está puesto sobre todo en el Nasdaq, que, como decimos, a punto de llegar al 2% de caída. Todo esto en un día en el que les decíamos, estamos a punto de escuchar a Donald Trump, vamos a escuchar ya al presidente de Estados Unidos, nuevo anuncio importante sobre medicamentos.
So today I'm thrilled to announce that the two world's largest pharmaceutical manufacturers, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, have agreed to offer their most popular GLP-1 weight loss drug, I call it the fat pill, remember? At drastic discounts. They're very effective drugs. And so far I've never heard anything bad about them. I only hear good about them. But is there anything bad about them, Bob? I haven't heard anything bad. Someday maybe it'll come out, which will notify you immediately. But so far I haven't heard that, including the drugs known as Zepbound and Wegovy, often called Ozempic. It's a triumph for American patients that will save lives and improve the health of millions and millions of Americans. Amazing thing. They are amazing. I want to thank Eli Lilly CEO David Ricks, a friend of mine. We've worked long and hard. He and I got this whole thing started in a way. And Novo Nordisk CEO Mike Dustar for joining us today. Great, talented people. They make a lot of money. I looked at the money, but they're entitled to the money because the companies are doing very well. Along with Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Secretary Howard Lutnick. Do you take any of this stuff, Howard?
Not yet.
Okay, good. CMS Administrator Mehmet Oz, he doesn't take it. Food and Drug Administrator Commissioner Marty McCary, and Director of Medicare Chris Klump. And we have Steve, where's Steve? Is he here? Head of Public Relations for the White House. He's taking it. The United States is just 4% of the world's population and consumes only 13% of all prescription drugs, yet pharmaceutical companies make 75% of their profits from the American customer. I would say that's not so good, right? It's not exactly great. To address this chronic unfairness, I signed an executive order earlier this year instructing my administration to do everything in our power to implement most favored nations drug pricing, something that has been helped greatly by tariffs, because when nations refuse to do it, we should have put this in the case yesterday. I just say, well, if you're not going to do it, we're going to charge you a like amount of tariffs. And they immediately say, we'll do it, which means that Americans should pay no more than the lowest price offered anywhere in the world. So that you've heard for years the disparity where you'll pay $150 for a pill in New York and you'll pay $10 for a pill in London. Now you're going to pay $20 both, because the world is a little bit bigger than the U.S., so it goes up that way, but you'll pay $20 and $20. A tremendous advantage to our country after years of being abused by the world system. Already Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and EMD, Serrano, have agreed to drastically lower their prices for American patients. And today, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk are joining the phenomenal list of the most exciting announcements. I mean, nobody's ever had announcements like, and this has to do with other pharmaceutical products also. But we're covering this today because it's such a big seller. I guess it's the #1 selling thing there is today. These are two companies that behind the groundbreaking weight loss drugs that have helped millions of Americans struggling with obesity live better, longer lives, everything else. These are the two companies that really broke ground. Until now, neither of these two popular drugs have been covered by Medicare for weight loss, and they've only rarely been covered by Medicaid. They've often cost consumers more than $1,000 per month, and some a lot more than that. Americans have been spending as much as 520% more for Zepbound and 1,400% more for Wegovy than patients in Europe. Think of that. 1,400% more than a patient in Europe for the exact same box. And that ends starting today. The other countries are not happy with us. I don't think they like me too much, Bobby, but that's okay. Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk are committing to offer Zepbound and Wegovy at most favored nations rates for American patients. This will slash the cost of Wegovy from $1,350 a month to ultimately $250 a month. $1,350 to $250. Did I do a good job? They don't write about it. You know, they like to not write these things. And reduce, you think Biden could have done this? I don't think so. And reduce the monthly cost of Zepbound from $1,080 to $346. In addition, they're both committing that future GLP-1 weight loss drugs taken orally, which are currently under development, will be sold at no more than $149 per month. It's a massive, think of that. You go from $1,300 to $149 a month. We anticipate these new versions will be coming out in a very short period of time. All of these drugs will be available directly to the consumer at trumprx.gov. Trump, they want to use my name. Trump, it better be good. trumprx.gov. And I think it's turning out to be pretty amazing, right, us? Just as significantly, Medicare and Medicaid will finally cover the cost of these weight loss drugs for millions of patients suffering from obesity. Co-pays for Medicare patients will be as low as $50. This is tremendous savings. I mean, now you're talking about from $1,350 to $50. This is tremendous news for the American seniors. And you all remember when I had 1/8 of 1% for the year. I got it 1/8 of, and I was so thrilled. But now we're cutting it 1,000%, 1,200%. Nobody's ever said anything like this. Nobody else could have done it, but I say that modestly. In addition, you think it was easy dealing with these people? It wasn't.
Atentos a este anuncio por parte de Donald Trump, el presidente de Estados Unidos, que anuncia que Eli Lilly y Novo Nordisk han conseguido una pausa de 3 años en los aranceles en Estados Unidos. Sus acciones están subiendo en torno al 2,2%, por ejemplo, en el caso de Eli Lilly, mientras que Trump está diciendo que los americanos deberían pagar los precios más bajos en el mundo por los medicamentos. Dice además sobre estos medicamentos para bajar de peso que espera nuevas versiones pronto. Seguimos escuchando a Trump hablando sobre medicamentos y sobre el desastre del Medicaid de Obama.
Meaning that you will pay the lowest price anywhere in the world. That's what you're going to pay. Whereas before they paid low prices and we paid, you know, thousands of percentile ahead more. And to sell these drugs to all consumers at deeply discounted prices via trumprx.com. When is trumprx.com opening?
The site is open. It will launch in terms of giving people prices before the end of the year.
Okay, got to make sure it's successful. It's got my name on it. I don't want to be like so many others. I don't want to be like the train they're building in California. Okay, which has about 15,000% cost overrun. Or the beautiful Obama building that he's building in Chicago for the museum, which is now shuttered up and dead. They got it up, and they couldn't finish. It's about, would you say, 5 years behind schedule? And about 2,000% over budget. Then he tells us how to run Medicaid. Many of the most widely used drugs will be available for 60% off, or even more than that. In addition, all new medications introduced by Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk to the American market will be sold at the heavily reduced most favored nations price. Most favored nations price, that's the best. Because they have been thousands of percent lower than what we were selling in many cases. Furthermore, Eli Lilly is investing $27 billion. That's all? And Novo Nordisk will invest $10 billion. That's all? That's peanuts. In the United States to reshore and do a big domestic manufacturing job in the facilities they're going to spend. So Eli Lilly spent $27 billion. Novo is spending $10 billion in the United States. So they're building new plant and equipment. That's part of what will be $20 or $21 trillion this year. There's never been anything like it. I know nobody talks about it, but there's never been anything like, I would say, you would say, that there's never been anything like this ever, whether it's China or Europe, or you could take all of Europe, there's never been anything like this. So we're already past 17 trillion. We're going to be, I think by the time the year closes out, we'll have investments of over $21 trillion based on the way we're going. And by the way, tariffs are very important. Without tariffs, perhaps it could be a little bit different, to put it mildly. Tariffs are so important. The decision in the Supreme Court would be devastating to our country if we got a negative, devastating if we got a negative decision. But this is a great day for American health and healthcare and for all of American patients. These are things that are miracles to have this happen. And they're, you know, we're bringing all our medicines, again, because of tariffs, we're bringing all our medicines. If you remember where during COVID, we made almost no medicine here. We had to go to China We had to go to Ireland. We had to go to other places, UK, to get our medicine. We didn't make it here. Now we're making it. We'll soon be making it all here, again, because of tariffs. And my election, but because of tariffs much more. For years, politicians have talked about making healthcare affordable, but my administration is actually doing it. Americans deserve the best healthcare in the world, and we're now getting the best healthcare at the lowest price. So I'd like to ask somebody who's doing a fantastic job, Secretary Kennedy, to say a few words, followed by Dr. Oz, Dr. Klum, and then Eli Lilly, CEO David Ricks, and Novo Nordisk CEO Mike Dustar. These are incredible stars in that business. Like Dustar is a big star. And I can tell you that David Ricks is one of the hottest people in the world in business, but the business that he's in is pharmaceutical. And the job he's done with Eli Lilly is incredible. Both of these gentlemen, they really are stars in the truest sense. And it's an honor to have you in the White House. And go to it, Bobby.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start by thanking you, Mr. President, for declaring war on chronic disease in this country. This is something no American president has ever done. If we want to solve the chronic disease crisis, we have to tackle obesity. Obesity is the #1 driver of chronic disease. 50% of our adult population are obese or overweight, and it drives about 50% of healthcare costs in this country. Diabetes, cardiac diseases, we are going to see a decline because of this historic agreement. We're going to see a decline in costs, but also, more importantly, in the...
Pendientes ahora de las declaraciones por parte de Robert Kennedy Jr. en un momento en el que estamos escuchando este anuncio de Donald Trump sobre los medicamentos y un momento en el que el presidente de Estados Unidos ha vuelto a apelar a la Corte Suprema de Estados Unidos. Dice Trump que una decisión negativa sobre los aranceles sería devastador para su país. Vuelve a advertir sobre esta decisión. Hoy decía Jamieson Greer que podría tomarse antes de final de año. Decía, bueno, pues que ayer habían escuchado propuestas, habían escuchado preguntas justas sobre este tema, estos aranceles de Trump que están en tela de juicio. Y bueno, pues el presidente de Estados Unidos también intenta presionar. Dice que una decisión negativa, es decir, paralizar estos aranceles, tumbar los aranceles, sería devastador para Estados Unidos. Vamos a seguir escuchando, en este caso, a Robert Kennedy.
It's not a panacea, it's not a silver bullet. President Trump has also instructed us to address and end the root causes of chronic disease, and we're doing that. We're about to release dietary guidelines that are going to change the food culture in this country. They're going to change the kind of food the military gets. They're going to change the kind of food that our children get. We're releasing those in December. The Presidential Council for Physical Fitness is going to get more Americans into, particularly our children, into physical activity so that we can attack the root causes of this. But in the meantime, there's nothing more important than we can do than lower this price. As I said, it is the #1 cost of all drugs. This is the biggest drug in our country. That's why this is the most important of all the MFN announcements we've made. This is going to have the biggest impact on the American people. All Americans, even those who are not on Medicaid and Medicare, are going to be able to get the same price for their drugs, for their GLP drugs. This happened because of the vision of David Ricks, of Mike Dustar, and the other people, and the people on our team who figured out a way to align the interests of the shareholders of their company with the health of the American public. And it is a momentous accomplishment. It took months and months of negotiations. And I had a wonderful conversation with Mike Dustar about his experience. And he thanked me for the caliber of people who are on our side of the negotiating team. Chris Klump, who walked away from $1 billion business in order to join this administration. Emma Hernandez, David Brooks, and of course, Dr. Oz and Marty McCary, who made this happen. They saw that this could be a win-win situation, that this was not a zero-sum game. The Biden administration tried to solve this problem unsuccessfully, I might add, by throwing $40 billion at it. They were able to achieve an agreement that will actually create savings for the American public. So we're making all of this available at a savings, and that's because the price of diabetes prescriptions is also going to drop. And the savings that we get from that are now going to make it available to people who do not have diabetes, people who have a BMI of 27 and above, or pre-diabetic, or have heart disease risk. They will be able to get it, but everybody will be able to get this drug, and it's going to change. We will lose, the American public, because of this agreement, will lose 125 million pounds by this time next year. Well, it is going to have dramatic effects on human health in this country. And I want to thank President Trump for his leadership. He said that I'd gotten a lot done as HHS secretary, but almost none of that is due to my ability. It's because I'm surrounded by people who are smarter than me, who are more able than me, and those people came into the administration because they were inspired by President Trump. People like Chris Klump are here because they see this.
Do you think they are smarter than you and
Yeah.
more able? No.
Believe me, they're a lot smarter than I am.
Why did you take that job? He doesn't really mean that he's being modest, I promise you, but
It is true, unfortunately.
it's a beautiful thing.
But I want to thank you, Mr. President, because you've made me a success here by allowing me to attract these extraordinary people. And I want to again thank David Ricks, who we've been in this Oval Office again and again. You keep saying he's the smartest guy in industry, that he could talk a dog off a meat truck. But they came to the table, and Mike Newstar told me, he said,
You convinced people for 20 years that it was okay for Europe to pay $10 and for America to pay $140. That's why they make 45, 50 million a year. We did. Finally, I said, I've had it, right? You did. He did. But anybody can do that, and they're entitled. But now it's down to what it should be.
and Mike Newstar told me what a pleasure it was to negotiate with people who were smart, who had common sense, who were able to put themselves in his position and hammer out this deal that is good for everybody. And it's great for the American public. I want to close again by just saying that this is a tool in the toolkit. It is not a silver bullet. It is an arrow in our quiver. It will allow a lot of people who are locked into high-risk obesity to finally lose weight, to reset, and then start doing the kind of things that will address the root causes of obesity. So I want to thank these extraordinary CEOs for sticking with us on this, for allowing us to make this happen. Mike Newstar said to me, he said, we've known we've had to do this for many years. We just haven't been able to get over the edge, and that this President Trump's order, his executive order, was a catalyst to do something that we always knew needed to be done. So again, thank you for your vision, for your commitment, and thank you to all the CEOs and all of my team for making this historic agreement happen.
Bobby, you haven't changed your view on Tylenol for women that are pregnant?
No, as I said.
There were some false reports out about Tylenol that Bobby changed his view. I don't think he's changed.
I'm not going to change until the science changes, and the science does not look like it's changing. It's getting stronger and stronger. Every day, what we recommend is that mothers, pregnant mothers, talk to their physicians, that the mothers of small kids talk to their physicians, and we've advised the physicians to reduce the thresholds and to reduce the amount of Tylenol that they give to children as much as possible, and only use it when it's absolutely critical.
So we're going to go through some of the deal points, but it does make itself clear that the real stake here is the forgotten man. President Trump I believe you won the election because you remember the forgotten man. You speak to them, they hear you, they listen to you. And he connects well because he actually does things that materially change their lives. Secretary Kennedy spoke passionately, as he always does, about the problems with obesity. And just to put some very fine point numbers on this, obesity itself is responsible for half of all chronic disease and definitely generates more than a quarter of all the money we spend out of CMS, the $1.75 trillion that we spend annually. We need to address this tempest of dramatically increasing prices for healthcare, and you're not going to do it just by throwing money at the problem. You have to actually literally deal with the causes of the increase in price, and pharmaceutical prices are a part of that. They've been a part of it for a long time, but this president insisted that we address it. In fact, the first time I heard this directly from you, sir, was in January at Mar-a-Lago, where he took Secretary Kennedy, myself, Mr. Ricks, who you'll hear from in a second, to dinner, and demanded explanations for most favored nation pricing and what's wrong with it. And there was not a good reason against it. Now, MAHA is critical. America will have to get fit in order to right-size the healthcare system, and MAHA has the answers. It has obesity management through diet and exercise and sleep and dealing with issues related to that. And I want to say it as clear as I can. Obesity is not an absence of GLP-1 drugs. We're all clear on that. But as Secretary Kennedy said, it is an arrow in our quiver that we must use and should use. The MAHA movement means making it easier for the right things to happen, easier for you to be healthy. If you're sitting at home and watching, that's what MAHA means to me. Reducing cost of the #1 most expensive medicine category in our country for Americans does just that. It is as MAHA as it gets. Today's the fourth MFN. President Trump highlighted the first three. Leading U.S. company, leading European company. We've dropped in fertility drugs, so we'll make lots of Trump babies, I'm hoping, by the midterms. But it's really about fairness. Fundamentally, it's fairness in pricing to Americans who have been getting ripped off, paying 3 times more than their European counterparts for the exact same product made in the same factory, in the same bottle, in the same packaging. We shouldn't be paying 3 times more, and we are no longer doing that. Fairness to the forgotten man also means dealing with the reality that they can afford a life-saving, life-changing drug that 10% or more of affluent Americans take, but folks without means can't manage it. Secretary Kennedy mentioned New York City. It's actually the #1 zip code is the Upper East Side, which is where you have property. And folks who know ritzy areas buy important real estate there because those real estate properties are worth a lot there. That should not be the #1 zip code in America for purchasing GLP-1 drugs. It speaks to the fact that we have an innately unfair system that penalizes folks